Hi everyone. We weren't able to do all the editing of the sound file that I expected we'd be able to do in our session, so I thought I would offer this quick screencast to walk you through some very fast Audacity style sound editing of some files. You can see here I've grabbed 3 files. These are from one of my group of students. This time we're going to work with those, and I'm going to pull up Audacity, which is my little free program here. It's really simple to start. I'm just going to grab these 3 files and drag them over and drop them into Audacity. You can see right away I've got 3 different microphones running, and it looks like their recording is a little quiet. One of the first things I want to do is amplify it a little bit so we can hear it, and so I'm going to go to Effect, Amplify. That's easy enough. And I'm going to bring up the sound just a little bit. I'll tell you why I'm only going to do it a little bit later. But we're going to bring that volume up like this. It takes it a second. Now I can hear what's going on. The students must have had the microphones turned low. That's sometimes a problem because sometimes getting rid of the background noise is a problem if the microphones are too quiet. So as I take a quick listen to what they've got.
Okay, welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More. I'm Grace, and I'm here with Hunter, the music expert, and Phoebe, the movie aficionada. And
Good for them. Okay, so that's fine. It's hard to hear, but there's a little bit of background hiss, and we want to make sure that goes away. To make a podcast professional recording, we'll make sure the hiss goes away. There are a couple ways to do that. Here's the easiest one. I'm going to select, just grab a section of the podcast. I'm going to zoom in on it here with the zoom tool. Grab a section where they're not talking. And if I listen, I can sometimes hear the hiss, but if I can't see it, if I can't hear it, I can at least see it. If you look over right in this section, I'll play it again, and you can see that there's some sound going on even though there's no voice. It's subtle, but it's enough for me to want to make it go away. To make that happen, I've selected that section, and now I'm going to tell Audacity every part of the podcast where that sound occurs I want to make go away. So I'm going to go Effect, Noise Reduction, which is right down here. It's nice that these things are alphabetical. And then I grab them and it says Get Noise Profile. Well, fortunately, I've already selected the section I want to remove. That's my noise profile. Now what I'm going to do is go back and select the section that I want to have the noise profile remove that sound, and that's everything. Select all 3 tracks across the 2 minutes here, and I'm going to make that go away. So I go back to noise reduction. I'm going to assume that these defaults are okay, these settings, and just hit OK. I can also preview it if I want to. Now you're not going to see any big change here in the tracks, but now that sound should be gone. So when I select the same section and play it, you see there's very little sound that was there like there was before. Now I feel better about amplifying, and I'll amplify it more fully so we can hear what they've got to say. And now they're a little more clear. So, and back here in amplify, now when I click and I bring them up, now they're sounding more loud and they're back on track doing this kind of podcast. We should have a nice clean sound. Let's hear it.
Okay, welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More. I'm Grace, and I'm here with Hunter, the music expert, and Phoebe, the movie aficionada. And
okay, so it's much cleaner now. And even when there's silence, I'm going to play this little section here.
This album is a big hit because
still there's a little bit of hiss in the background, and you can work on that. And sometimes you have to do 2 rounds of noise removal after the amplification as well. But either way, this is going to work well for us. Now that we've got this section, I'm going to take a section which looks like the ending, and I listen to that.
Here's a snippet of Rap Saved Me.
And that's where they stopped. They created some errors. So what I'm going to do is start editing this out. I want to take this section of the podcast. I'm going to grab all 3 tracks and cut. And when I do that, that gets rid of the sounds that I don't want. I also noticed at the front they had some laughter and things. Let's see if we can pull those out of there. So I'm going to zoom in on this podcast, go over to the front where I heard those initial sounds.
okay, welcome to the first episode.
I'm going to see if I can get all that section. They say welcome right there. I'm going to pull that out. Oh, I should probably do this by grabbing all 3 sections. and hit cut. See what it sounds like now.
Welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More.
Right. All that little paralanguage and sounds that they were doing are gone, and we have the professional sound now. So we've got opening, clean ending. Now what we're going to do, there's a couple other effects we can look at. We talked a little bit in the session about the compressor, and the compressor is a way to bring the voices together. Let's just see what that sounds like if we compress for a minute. Here's how I can test all of them. Audacity is nice. When I click compressor or any of the other, I can preview it to see if the sound is what I want it to be.
Welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More. I'm Grace, and I'm here with Hunter.
Sounds like they've moved into a tin can a little bit, which is why we don't always use the compressor for voice. I could adjust the settings and all, but sometimes it's a nice thing to bring the volume up a little bit that way. The same is true of normalize, is a way to shift the way the volume is handled.
Welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More. I'm Grace, and
again, it sounds a little bit like it's going to do some damage to the quality of the voice, so we're not going to mess with that too much. I do want to do a couple more things. We're going to equalize the voices just a little bit. I have a preset here where I bring the bass up of the voices just a little.
welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More. I'm Grace, and I'm here with Hunter.
I like that setting because what that does is it brings the warmth of the voice out just a little bit more by bringing up the bass frequency and bringing that down. You'll notice that Audacity lets you do lots of presets and things, but I have this one that I created myself, and I apply that, and it's obviously changed a little bit of the dynamic here, as you can see. Now we've got those bits. We can play with auto duck and some other things in a moment. I'm going to squeeze these short, and then we're going to select some music. And I want to put some music behind it. I'll show you how to do that. We're going to add some more tracks and make those separate parts of it. So over here, somewhere here, I've got some tracks that I've brought up. We've got some short ones and some long ones. And I'm going to do the same thing to get the audio tracks into Audacity. I'm going to grab a couple and just drop them in. So let's try something like Showdown. I have created already some edits so to make it a little easier. Here's a 20-second intro and a 20-second outro. That's what I heard a lot of podcasters say the word outro. As an English teacher, I know that's not a word, but that's okay. Let's see. We're going to take the intro and outro, and we're going to drag them into Audacity just like that. And now I've got some sounds as well for intro and others. Now, what happens if they all play on top of each other? Because if I play them now, yeah, that's a mess. So what I'm going to do is drag. You'll see this function right here where my cursor is a time shift tool. And when I've got that, I can drag sections to go where I want them to go. In this case, since this is my intro, right here, I'm going to take that and leave it where it is. I'm going to move the whole section of their voices, drag them just a little, whoops, take them all, drag them just a little bit, see if I can get them all here. Drag them just a little bit in this direction. And now I've got 15 seconds of intro music. And I'm going to move the back end a little bit and have this fade out a little bit. You'll see what the effect is here in a moment. So here's my music, 15 seconds of intro and what it does.
Welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More. I'm Grace, and I'm here with Hunter, the music expert, and Phoebe.
It's a nice little function because all I did to make this music do that is I added another function here to this sound. I took a clip of music that I wanted, all royalty free from the Creative Commons, and I took it and I added a fade out. And the fade out allowed me to put the sound of the voices over the music, and that caused the kind of crossfade that we hear, which is kind of a nice deal. When I listen to the back end, the same thing's going to happen. Now this is a clip. They wanted to add more to it, but we'll pretend it's the end of the show and listen to what it sounds like.
I've Saved Me featuring Quavo, Ghostface Killers featuring Travis Scott, and Ric Flair drip. Here's a snippet of Rhapsody.
Okay, and you get the idea because we're going to fade out on that one too. So it makes it sound like they actually have some intro and outro music. There's one more feature I want to show you, something called Auto Duck. And Auto Duck allows us to have the music play behind the scene the whole time, except what it does is it has the voices over the top of the music. In order to do this, I'm going to grab a larger piece of music and I'm going to drag it in here. Let's see if I can find my music that I had before. And see, there's the showdown. I have a 2-minute, 15-second version, so I'll have to do a little cut to it, but that's okay. It'll give me a sense of how I want it to go. I'm going to drag that one in here as well. It pops in. It's a little longer of a file. Massive file there. That's okay. I'm going to use the whole thing just the way it is, but this time I'm going to mute those other two so we don't have to hear them. It's a nice little feature, so I only have to listen to the tracks I want. And I'm going to bring this whole section of music, this track, to the top. And there's the drag. Now, if I have this whole piece here, I can now go Auto Duck. And what this should do is it gives me a chance to have the music play, and then it drops down underneath the voice and comes back up. This is the default setting. I'm going to bring the music down even a little further, just so when it drops for decibels. This is a part of preference, and you can play with this to see what you like. But let's see what happens when we put that in place. You can see what it did to my music. Now let's see what it does when we hear it.
Welcome to the first episode of Movies, Music, and More. I'm Grace, and I'm here with Hunter, the music expert, and Phoebe, the movie aficionada, and we are M Cubed. Hey guys! Today we have some juicy reviews to lay on you. I'm going to pass it to Hunter for your music review.
Hey everybody, my name's Hunter, and here's my music review. Earlier last month, 21 Savage of it.
Now you can hear in this case, and we had the music, it works out pretty well. There's a couple sections where the music is coming back in because it understood that there was silence. I can fix that. I can take that out. I can delete it. I can make it lower amplification. But I noticed that when Hunter comes in, here he is on track 2 now, he's not very loud. I can amplify him just even a little more so that he is a little louder over that music.
Hey everybody, my name's Hunter, and here's my music review. Earlier last month, 21 Savage, a very popular rapper.
And you get the sense of how Auto Duck works. It's a handy little approach to using the music that way if you want music playing behind you. Of course, I could have done this manually as well. I could bring this down and have it fade and have an effect that way. So I could go like a fade out there, and I could do a fade up here. It's a little different. I could take the whole section and make some cuts to it, and I could also just reduce this whole thing and make the whole thing fade out. There's a lot of effects I could choose, but that's just a matter of playing with your preferences and what you like. I'm going to get rid of this. Now the last step, I like the intro and closing music. The last step is an export. So I go File, I'm going to go export this file. I export as an MP3. That's usually the best and most versatile of the file types, and save it wherever you want to, but and make sure it's a title. So I'm going to call it M Cubed Intro, because that's what they call themselves, is M Cubed. I'm going to make sure that my quality of the sound file is relatively small. Lots of options. Once you get to 256 kilobytes per second, you're talking about CD level quality. We don't need that for voice, so we're going to go down anywhere between 64 to 96 is plenty of quality for the kind of music we're doing. So I'm going to choose 96. What this does is it keeps the size of the file small. And that's relatively important, especially when you're hosting a lot of podcasts and you don't want to eat up all your paid space on the server. And there's no need to, because you won't hear the difference. Now I've got my final file. I want to show you one more thing about the final file, which is important. And that is if once I put it in here, I should have saved it to right here, It's only like 1 meg, so that's great. I'm going to put it right down back in here so we can take a look at it. When you look at the file now, it's all one track. It's all one stereo track. So once you've exported, all those multi-tracks go away. And it's important to realize that. Once you do an export, you're done. You can do a little bit of tweaking, but I can't pull the music out now. I can't change the volumes or anything like that. All I can do is work on the single master track. That's why it's important to work with the multiple tracks as you see here. So, but that's all there is to it. It's going to sound the same whether it's played one track or multiple tracks, and I've got a published file. Thanks, and I hope this helped. Bye.